Okay, round two. My name is Will Martin, and I'm here from Dremio to talk to you about the Open Data Lakehouse and who benefits from open standards. So I'm Will Martin. I'm the EMEA Evangelist for a company called Dremio. I've been in the data space for about 15 years. I started out doing statistical analysis at the Large Hadron Collider. I've done data science consultancy, and I've worked for various startups. So along the way, I've pretty much touched every industry and the data issues they have there, and how they store it, how they work on it. And now I work at a place called Dremio. So this is the dry slide about who Dremio is. Just over 10 years old. We are the Agentic Lakehouse, so our push now is to join data lakehouses with Agentic AI and help whoever you are to use AI and help you do your analytics work. The more fun version is this one. So Dremio, it's pronounced Dremio, no emphasis, no long E, like dress. Me-o, this is our mascot. This is Gnarly, very popular guy, appears in lots of places on my t-shirt, which you can't see because it's cold. He's on some stickers over there by the pizza, if you like. Or if you've not heard of Dremio, and you've not heard of Gnarly, you may be familiar with this guy. Well, you should know it. But yes, this is Nessie. This is the mascot for the open source Iceberg data catalog. So Dremio created Nessie, and then we made it open source. So you're probably familiar with this, especially if you are creating or using lakehouses in your own time. So Nessie's a big open source project, and open source and OSS is a big part of what we do at Dremio. So back in 2016, we co-created Apache Arrow. So this is an in-memory and in-transport format for processing your data. So they don't track all the libraries, but PyArrow, the Python library, sees over 100 million downloads a month. So it is widely used. It's fantastic stuff. 2017, Apache Iceberg came out, so we didn't help create this in any way, but we are a big key contributor. So this happens in a few ways, things like education, people like myself giving talks, people like our evangelists in America, Alex Merced, writing a book on it, but also in terms of our developers. So we contribute to the code for Iceberg and likewise for Polaris and Arrow. So we have engineers on staff whose sole job is to write code and contribute it. But also we will write proprietary code for ourselves, and sometimes we will also donate that if it's relevant. And then in 2024, we co-created Apache Polaris with Snowflake. This was a joint venture. So this is a new open source metadata catalog, and I'll talk a bit more about it a bit later. But there is discussions on it graduating. So at the moment, it's still a project in incubation, but discussions are happening. It may debut soon. So we're talking about lakehouses. I thought I'd be going last, so I assumed there'd be more lakehouse chat. In case no one here is familiar with a lakehouse, the basics are of a typical lakehouse platform. You've got your file format for storing your data, metadata format. Your metadata goes in your table format. You have an enterprise catalog, and you have some sort of query engine. So for us at Dremio, this is how our stack looks, and it's open source, and it's Apache right the way through. So we store data in Parquet because it's column-based, fantastic for analytics. We store metadata in Iceberg. We have our own open catalog, which is powered by Polaris. And we have a Java-based query engine, so it's not Spark-based at all, and that uses Arrow. So we believe in open source, we contribute to it, and we use it in the whole part of our stack. I won't talk much about Arrow because we are more lakehouse focused today. But the big thing for Arrow recently is ADBC, the Arrow database connector. So this is something come up recently, and it's seeing a lot of very visible industry adoption. So big promotions and some marketing emails around DuckDB, Power BI, BigQuery. These are now using ADBC, and the idea here is you use Arrow in memory, and if you're trying to get it somewhere else, it usually involves converting, wasting time, wasting compute. Now it's Arrow in one place, you transport it as Arrow, you land it in Arrow. Very much like Iceberg, all your efficiencies are there, are fueled by you just doing less work. This is what ADBC helps you do. In terms of Iceberg, some of the recent things, we had the version 3 of the spec come out this year. It's added a lot of great things. It makes it a governed data foundation, which I think we'll be hearing a bit more about later. Added a few cool things. Binary deletion vectors. Again, more efficiency. Some more data types. You had semi-structured data goes in, geospatial types. And there's also the variant data type, which is something we were going to copy from Delta Lake. And as a good demonstration of the ecosystem and the community spirit, they donated it to Parquet, because we will build one of Parquet. So it's now part of the Parquet standard. Any table format, Iceberg, Delta Lake, can use that as part of its processes. And so V3's out. I'll gloss over some of the changes. But V4 is already going ahead. So the broad idea, because it's not finalized, better engine support, more efficiency, faster planning, simpler to use. All great things to have. And then finally Polaris, incubating, because it's not come out, it's not debuted fully. It's really hitting its stride. So it was launched last year with Snowflake around July. No, what did I say? Last year we went V1. So it took about over a year, just over a year to go from launching to become V1. V1.3 came out last week. So in less than 6 months, there's been 3 major releases. 1.4 is supposed to come out in February. So it's really coming along and getting all these great features. You've got things you need for production. You've got governance with credential vending. You have really cool location restrictions, so you can restrict access depending on where people are in the world. And it's now multi-format support. So it came out just doing Iceberg, because most people use Iceberg. But it now supports generic tables, and that means anything that's not Iceberg, which means Delta Lake. So now you have a really performant, open source, featured catalog that you can use. You have an alternative to Glue, you have an alternative to Unity Catalog. Okay, and in terms of AI, you've got the Model Context Protocol. So us at Dremio, we have our own Model Context Protocol server, an official one. So whatever you want to use, this is how you connect whatever your AI is to whatever you want. So with the Model Context Protocol, pick your front end, pick your model, and you can easily integrate with whatever your systems are, whether it's HR, Slack, or if you're bold enough to give your agent a credit card and access to purchase stuff, you can do that. So the topic today, who benefits from open source? So Arrow, Iceberg, Polaris, these are all open source standards and formats. So who benefits from using them? So let's think the other way. What's the opposite of open? Proprietary. So if you have 2 kind of people, if you're a vendor, proprietary format is something you have to sell, right? It's something you have to build, you have to maintain it, and you have to sell it to people and convince them it's worth using. You also have to understand your format on a technical level to justify it. Your salespeople have to understand it on a technical level to sell it, but they also have to understand every other format or alternative and why it's good to use. And then for a user, it's vendor lock-in, right? You always look at proprietary formats as a trap. You don't want to look at it. And if you're a user who isn't paying for it, if you're like a hobbyist, someone who's building stuff for yourself, it's an expensive trap. Proprietary formats tend to cost money, and you go open source because it's cheap. So the alternative, open source. So if you're a vendor, you've got greater feature velocity, right? You're not dependent on your own roadmap, you've got the roadmaps of all these projects. If you're doing a Lakehouse and you've got Polaris, you've got Iceberg, these are independent roadmaps. So features you want to use are being developed by the community, and really, or you're contributing to the community, you can focus on other stuff. You can also focus on implementation because the specs are there. You're not designing the stuff you're building, you're just doing the implementation. And you can focus on unique features. So you can treat things that have open source standards or options as sort of solve problems. You can focus on something else to add to the market. You also benefit from interoperability. You can align with the industry because you're converging on standards. And this stuff's proven as well. This stuff goes around a while. So Arrow's been around a long time and lots of people are using it. So it's not a puff of smoke. It's going to be here for a while. It's tried and tested. So you can adopt this stuff with confidence. And it's easier to sell as well. So For interoperability, if you go from one vendor, they could be using Iceberg as part of their stack, and if you're trying to sell to them, you're not ripping and replacing everything, converting to a different table format, different database, things like this. You can just replace parts of things, and it's far easier. But there's not many vendors here, so let's talk about users in a second. Actually, sorry, so I forgot. So where does this leave vendors, right? So if you have all these open implementations and you're building part of the stack, I have a good example of feature velocity example. So I've taken Dremio as an example. Like I said, we teamed up with Snowflake to launch Apache Polaris. Lots of great features. Credential vendoring for cloud and hyperscalers, role management. It's got the Iceberg REST protocol. But some things are missing because it's still a work in progress, right? It's relatively junior of a catalog. So some of these things that are missing are things like role-based access control at the table level, and then row and column level access control. So Databricks would call this attribute-based access control. I'd call it FGAC, because it's a nice word to say, it's quite fun. But these things are kind of missing from Polaris as it stands. So what we've done in our open catalog as a vendor is we've added them in. And the idea here is either to contribute what we've made to the project, or if the project makes its own alternative, we drop ours and use that. And then other nice features as well, but these are more around some of the headaches of Iceberg. I'm not spoken about it too much, but we add in some other things. You'll see there's some other products you can buy, things like Tableflow from Confluent, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. There's other features you can add around just some of the headaches around using Iceberg. So table maintenance features, things like garbage collect and do compactions. Vendors like us are adding this into what they sell because it's something that is needed if you're using an Iceberg implementation. Quite critically for things like we have here in purple, there isn't an open source alternative or open source option yet. So that's where vendors are finding the niche on what to sell. But like I said, we're not vendors here. Well, I am, but we're more users. So for users, you get choice with open source for RSS. You get protection from vendor lock-in. You're not fixing to a format or formatting your data to something that only one company uses. You've got multiple roadmaps, like I said. You also get performance. So these are all community-driven projects, and they perform well. They're not just non-proprietary. These are developed by people who are very enthusiastic and committed to the topics. So your features you see are features that the community, the users want to see. And they fix issues the users experience. So you get quality stuff. Whereas the alternative for proprietary formats can be, the product roadmap could be other reasons, stakeholders, obligations to certain customers. Whereas community-driven is a bit more democratic on it. You also benefit from interoperability. You can easily swap out components because you're all using the same standards. You learn common standards. So as a user who uses open source software, it's much more relevant and useful to you to learn Apache Iceberg than it is to, say, learn one company's proprietary format. Like you're not pigeonholing yourself or learning like a dead end. This is useful stuff. And these projects all play well together. So they are community driven, but these communities overlap quite a lot. And finally, cost. Andrew brought it up earlier. A story from me is my first job at my PhD was working on a nuclear fusion reactor, and I had to write all my code in Python because Python was free, whereas the institute was using MATLAB, and that had lots of license costs. So while I was doing residual gas analysis coding, I also had to convince very senior people that Python was worth using. But I said these projects work well together, so these are some of the ways. So you've got aligned data types across things. So Arrow and Iceberg both use the variant data type, various geospatial data types, so you're not data converting as you go through your pipeline. Makes things very efficient. You've got deletion vectors in Iceberg, and then dynamic filtering in Arrow, so you can just have more efficient queries. Again, this is Arrow and Iceberg being efficient by just doing less work, opening less files. You have connectors just included. You've got the Polaris REST catalog, you've got ADPC, so you're not making any custom connectors or writing code. There's stuff there to use. there's less work for you to do. And then finally, with Polaris supporting Delta, you can have a unified governance layer in just one place. So if you are using both, or you're integrating with another part of your company that is using, say, Databricks and Delta Lake, you don't have to pick a table format and convert things. You can play well together in one place, in the same catalog. So as an example of this to close out, I will use Iceberg as a nice success story of this open source benefits. So Iceberg is the industry standard as the table formats. So this is a rough graph of the adoption. Came out around 2021, as Andrew mentioned. A couple of big players came in straight away, AWS, Google Cloud, a couple of small players like us. And we just saw growing adoption across the years, and it finally spiked 2025, last year. It's still last year, yeah. With Databricks, with the acquisition of Tabular. So the reason here is Databricks essentially is Delta Lake. Their whole stack is built on that format. They created it, but Databricks want everyone to use Databricks, and the community is on Iceberg. So they've come to Iceberg, and now they support both. But Iceberg is a few things. We keep talking about the Iceberg table spec and the Iceberg format, but really it's 4 things. And I put them up here just to remind you that it's actually a few things. And likewise, there's a few reasons why Iceberg has pulled ahead. I'm not going to go into them here, but personally for me, this is the reason I think that there's widespread adoption for Iceberg. This is the REST spec. This is how your engines and your catalogs talk to each other, basically. And it's the reason you can put a nice graph like this up. So here are a range of engines and tools that adhere to the REST spec. Here are a range of catalogs. So you have full, easy choice to switch between them. Again, it is a spec, it's a specification for how these communicate. So it's endpoints and it's JSON you should be communicating with. It's not implementation. So some of these vary in performance, cost, you name it. Some of these don't really adhere to the spec too closely. But you have all these options here. So say you built your own lakehouse, you're using Spark and Nessie. Well, now, okay, maybe you should start using Polaris now. So you switch out to Polaris, you don't have to change code. And likewise, you can have various units using different engines, running off the same engine, same catalog. This is fantastic, and just is a testament to the support for the project. And a real-life example is this. So I said I'd mentioned Confluent again. This is their TableFlow product. So this is a managed Kafka to table offering they do. So whether it's just plain Kafka or Flink, it converts to Iceberg or Delta Lake tables. You've got a range of catalogs, range of tools, range of third-party engines. So it looks similar to the previous graph, but I'll draw your attention to here. So this is the external catalog options you have here. And there are 4 things there. And I'll reduce the options to make it easier to tell what's wrong. Let's rule out Unity Catalog. It's not actually supported yet. So you have 3 options here. AWS Glue, that's a catalog. Apache Polaris, that's a catalog. And the Iceberg REST spec, that isn't a catalog. That's a connection spec to connect to multiple catalogs. And in fact, Polaris uses the Iceberg REST spec. And Glue does kind of as well. But it's a little, not all of the spec. So really you've got 2 options for connecting to Confluent, and they basically both use Iceberg. So really it's this meme, right? You've all seen it. The entire, this is a managed offering, and it's entirely propped up on the strength of this one open source specification. But there are drawbacks. I'm almost done, I promise. 2 main things: politics. So it's community driven. So there is negotiation as to what goes in. So getting features in can be difficult. It can be like trying to get a bill over the line, getting people to agree and vote for your PRs. But this also affects speed. So the feature velocity of proprietary stuff can be a lot quicker than stuff you would see in open source sometimes. The other stuff is Gen AI. So these are open projects, and people who commit to them are invested and passionate about them. But sometimes people, if I'm being blunt, don't have the expertise to contribute. So there is a rising trend of people contributing generated code to the project, and then humans will review it as part of the committee, and then they'll have an LLM respond to the notes. So it's a kind of frustrating loop, and getting trickier to spot, but that is one thing that's making this kind of hard. There's a bit of noise around what goes into the project. But I will say, they're both very interesting. So if you have any interest in Iceberg or Polaris, go to their websites. You can see the features that are going in and people voting on them. You can see the specs, so what people want to go in, how they're designing the features. And it's really interesting. One of my favourite things to do at Dremio is go to our Polaris Slack channel and see what's going on in the project. And I recommend you do the same for the open source stuff. So there we go. So the short of it, who benefits from open source projects? Everyone, right? If you're a user, you get choice without sacrificing performance. It tends to be cheaper in terms of just paying for the specs and the stack. Vendors, you don't have to do so much custom work, and you're less off-putting to people you're trying to sell to, and everyone gets interoperability, which is fantastic. Drawbacks, community-driven, there's the politics, can slow things down. It also can sometimes be tricky to get product support for something that you haven't bought, if it's open source. And I mentioned it for the Iceberg spec, but specification doesn't mean implementation. So stuff that adheres to the spec may not be built very well, or could be too slow or too expensive for what you want to do. So we had the lovely graph, but whatever you're picking as part of your stack, look at the fine print, try it out. And thankfully, because it's using a common spec, it's really easy to try things out and swap things out. And if you're interested in Dremio in any way, we have a new cloud version that's up. You can do a 30-day trial. And no cost, no credit card, no nothing. And it's got a built-in AI agent if you don't want to build your own, but it also has MCP. And yeah, that is it from me.